Hey, good morning. Ready to PPP? All right. So let's jump right in. I'm curious, although most of you don't have cameras on. I never met a group of camera shy real estate agents. That seems like an oxymoron to me. I'm not sure why each and every one of you doesn't have a camera on showing your smiling, happy faces to the world. All right, I got all of about one or two of you I guilted one or two of you. Oh, three, oh my goodness, she hadn't turned her camera on. Now we're talking. Now we're cooking with gas. Okay, so just by a quick show of hands, either visual hands if your camera's on, or maybe digital hands if your camera is not on. How many of you on this call applied for and received a round one PPP loan? Okay, so just a couple of you. Okay, so we're all clear. What is PPP? PPP is the payroll protection program. It was initially rolled out as part of the very first pandemic stimulus package that was signed into law. I think it was March 31st or April 1st of 2020. Right, those loans were given throughout the late spring and into the midsummer, with the last loans, with applications being suspended by about the first week or so of August, right? The newest stimulus package that was signed into law in late December did include a round two for additional PPP. The first round of PPP was actually quite simple to receive. There weren't many requirements to it, as independent contractors, sole business owners, self-employed persons, whatever you want to call yourselves, you were entitled to those same loans, even if you didn't have actual payroll, right? Some of you may have had actual payroll that you obtained PPP funding for. Most of you that did receive PPP funding, it was to replace your own salary. This go around, there is an additional requirement, right? And so let's talk about the additional requirement right off the bat, because that's really going to be the arbiter as to whether or not you can move forward here. First and foremost, you need to have, if you received a PPP in round one, you need to have used all the money up, right? I don't think that was an issue for most of you. For those of you that I've worked with, we've kind of spent the money, got that out of your bank account. You're already on the road of applying for forgiveness. So I don't think that's necessarily an issue. However, the added requirement for this round, this time, is that you need to be able to demonstrate a reduction in what the SBA is calling gross receipts. I'll talk about what that is for you in a moment. A reduction of at least 25% or more in gross receipts in any quarter of 2019 versus any quarter in 2020. So the first thing that you have to recognize is that means you would have had to have been in business for at least a quarter in 2019 to be able to compare it to a quarter in 2020. Right? So if you're brand new to the industry, you may have to look at where you came from. Right? If you just got your license and started in real estate in the last 6 months or so, you may have to look backwards and see what industry you came out of. Did you have a different version of of a 1099 role, or did you have a W-2 job, right? And so the W-2 job may not, if you came from a W-2 job and are now in real estate, and that happened in the last 6 to 12 months or so, that you may not be eligible for this. We'll have to look at that, but you may not be eligible for this because you do need a quarter, at least one quarter in 2019 to compare to at least one quarter in 2020 to be able to be eligible. Now, gross receipts is ultimately, so that may mean a bunch of you are going to be like, oh, okay, well, I just found another half hour this morning because I'm out, right? I can see by some of the names and some of the faces that may be what that means for a bunch of you on this call, because you may not fit that initial criteria. For those of you who do have 19 and 20 to compare, what you'll need to do is you'll need to take a look at gross receipts, again, as defined by the SBA. I can read that to you if you'd like, so that you have exactly what the SBA says gross receipts are. So gross receipts generally are all revenue in whatever form received or accrued from whatever source, including from the sale of services or products, dividends, rents, royalties, fees, or commissions, reduced by any returns or allowances, but excluding net capital gains and losses. So all that blah, blah, blah means is it's your income. It's your income, right? So your 1099 reportable income from any quarter in 2019 compared to your 1099 reportable income in any quarter in 2020, right? So some of you may be thinking, okay, well, where on earth do I get that? Well, my first answer, some of you are not going to like the first answer. The first answer is you should get it from your own record keeping and tracking systems. I can see some of you rolling your eyes, and yet I'm not kidding, right? These are some of the reasons why tracking is so important, right? Because all of a sudden something comes along like this and you think, huh, all right, well, I don't know where to get that information. The good news is that we have your back and we do track it for you. Some of you have no idea where to go to find that tracking, and so I'm going to show you that as well. But this is an opportunity for you to, if you don't visit your multi-year trends report, your multi-year trends report is the perfect tool to be able to tell you exactly what you did quarter by quarter in 2019 versus quarter by quarter in 2020. Does that make sense to everybody? And so what you'll do is you'll pull that multi-year trends report. Again, I'll show you where to go in just a moment to grab that report. You'll pull that report, and now it's month by month. So you'll have to chunk it down into the 4 quarters and do some math, and then see whether or not you have in any one of the 4 quarters. And I do now have confirmation from the SBA that it is any one of the 4 quarters, quarter 1, 2, 3, or 4. It doesn't have to be post-March. It doesn't. Originally, the information came out that it was the first, second, or third quarter, and it did not include the 4th quarter. I do believe that to be inaccurate. So any of the 4 quarters of 2019 compared to any of the 4 quarters in 2020, if your gross receipts, and for you, that's going to be your 1099 income, is 25% or better lower in 2020 in any one of those quarters, you now get to check that box and say, okay, I qualify for a new PPP loan. Any questions on that portion of what I just spoke about? If yes, either raise your digital hand or just unmute and I will call on you. Eric.
Yeah, Rick. Thanks. So I moved here in September from Belgium, Europe. So I was an employee in Europe.
Yeah, Eric, we're having a real struggle hearing you. So I think I'm going to paraphrase what I think your question is, and nod your head if I'm right. I think what you said was you moved to the US from Belgium in the fall and so are curious whether or not PPP may work for you, yes? Okay, and so my answer to that is probably not in this perspective, simply because you weren't in business here in this field in 2019 to be able to compare the two. Again, I would go to your financial institution. So all of this is cloaked in, I do my absolute best to get all the information that I possibly can from the SBA, from the government, and read, and interpret for you. Also from realtor associations, and yet I'm not your financial institution, right? And I'm not. So I would take this to your financial institution and say, hey, I'm curious about a PPP loan. Here's my circumstances, and have them say no. I think in that scenario, the answer will be no. And yet, again, don't take my word for it. Always go to your financial institution once they are open for questions about this and get that confirmation.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions on the, hold on, there's stuff going on in the chat. Let me just take a quick peek here in the chat. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, compliments on my sweater. Thank you very much. It was from my grandmother for Christmas. Okay, Marcel, tell me what you'd like me to repeat.
What you were saying about, I was on the phone, really, I missed that. And I just hear you saying something about the quarter that we need to use.
Okay, so here it goes. If you're on the phone, hang up the phone, because here's how I'm about to say it. You've got to verify quarter by quarter 2019 versus 2020. And if any quarter in 2020 is 25% or lower than the same quarter in 2019, based on your 1099 reportable income, you now qualify for a round 2 PPP. If you made the same amount of money quarter by quarter, you don't qualify. If you made more money in 2020 quarter by quarter, you do not qualify. Now, if you made more money in the first 2 quarters, the last 2 quarters, because the market started to get crazy, but you were down in the first half of the year, you do qualify, right? It's only one of the 4 quarters, 19 to 20, that you have to prove a 25% or better reduction in income.
Okay, I got it. That's very important. Thank you.
You are quite welcome. And so, okay, and so Bruna's asking, all quarters were lower than 2019. So again, if all your quarters were lower, as long as they're at least 25% or more lower, right? So you have to do that math. You just choose one that meets the criteria, and you'll submit some version of now, for most of you, or maybe all of you on this call, the PPP loan that you are going to be asking for is still only 2.5 times your monthly net profit, right? I'll tell you how you calculate that in a second. Which means for most of you, if not all of you, your loan will be less than $150,000, right? I don't think there's anybody on this call who, well, actually, excuse me, let me stop there. There's nobody on this call, unless you have tons of employees underneath you that I don't know about, who will qualify for more than the 20,833, because you are capped at $100,000. So even those of you who earn more than the $100,000, you're capped at $100,000. 2.5 months of your $100,000 income is 20,833. So that's the most of loan that you'll be eligible for, that is eligible for forgiveness. So how do you calculate it? For most of you, does anybody run their business through like a C Corp or an S Corp where they pay themselves through payroll as a salary? Anybody?
Not this business, but another business.
Yeah. So if you pay yourself through a payroll company, right, which would be like an S Corp, What I'm about to say is slightly different for you, but I'm going to go the other path because most of you are going to utilize Schedule C of your 2019 tax return. Remember, you're applying now. Your Schedule C for 2020 is not due until April 15th. So they are not using that. So you're using Schedule C of your 2019 tax return to determine what your net profit is. Now that's Schedule C, line 31. Schedule C, line 31. And what Schedule C, line 31 does is take all of your business income, and your accountant then subtracts out all of your expenses. Line 31 is the net. It's your taxable income. So if you made $50,000 and you had expenses of $20,000, you don't get to use the $50,000 as the number you calculate your PPP off of. You've got to subtract out all those expenses. So it's the net profit on your Schedule C, line 31. Now, if you had a loss, if you spent more than you earned, you're not eligible. So that's another stopping point, right? So first stopping point is, did you have that 19 versus 20 quarter by quarter reduction? If you did, then you get to look at your Schedule C from your 2019 tax return, and Schedule C, line 31. If it's positive, now you have a net profit to work from. The calculation to that, and Ryan, I saw your question there. I'm going to point to, you can certainly post that. Ryan has a PDF of some of what I'm talking about. I'm also going to show you on the SBA site where to get all this information, and all the PDFs are posted there as well. So grab it from Ryan in the chat, or just give me another minute or two and I'll show you on the SBA site exactly where to get this info, so you can grab it from there as well. So your 2019 Schedule C, line 31 will tell you what your net profit is. The way you calculate your PPP loan, or what you're eligible for, is you take that number and divide it by 12, right? Because you need an average monthly payroll, right? Again, for those of you who don't pay yourselves through a payroll company, your average monthly payroll is going to be 1/12 of your annual net profit. So let's just say that your Schedule C, line 31 from 2019 is $60,000, just for argument's sake. If it's $60,000, 60,000 divided by 12 is $5,000, right? And then you take that number and multiply it by 2.5, because the PPP loan is 2.5 months of your average monthly payroll. So in the example I just gave, 60,000 divided by 12 is 5,000, times 2.5 is $12,500. That's what you would be eligible for that PPP round 2 loan. Is everyone with me so far? Any questions about where you go and how you calculate? We're getting to how you apply in a second. Questions going once on that, going twice on that? Yes.
Can you explain it one more time? Like, I understand that. So what do you take, the year 2019 year?
Yes, so it's your 2019 Schedule C.
Okay.
2019 Schedule C. Even if by some miracle you have completed your 2020 taxes already, they're not accepting 2020. My understanding is they're not accepting 2020 Schedule Cs for this purpose. You need to use your 2019 Schedule C for this purpose. Frankly, I'm not sure how you could have your taxes done yet, because nobody has their 1099s yet. So you have to use 2019 because that's the year that's in the rear view at this point.
Rick?
Yes, Mary.
This is the same formula we used for the first round, correct? The 2.5 times.
Yes, ma'am. That's all the same.
Okay.
That's all the same. And remember, if your Schedule C line 31 is over $100,000, you have to base the calculation on $100,000 because there's a cap on how much you can calculate. So it's only that first $100,000 that you're eligible for. And I'll give you what the math is on that. If you're over $100,000, now again, that doesn't mean that your 1099 was over $100,000, because some of you, your 1099 was over $100,000, but by the time your accountant got through with filing your taxes, your Schedule C line 31 ends up being, $42,000 or $71,000. That's the number you have to use. I had somebody say to me in the first round, well, that's not fair. My accountant works really hard to develop all those expenses to reduce my taxable income. Well, I get that, but you can't have it both ways, right? You can either pay tax on the money and use it to file for something like this, or you can not pay tax on the money and file for less of a PPP. You can't have your cake and eat it too. That's not the way the world works. So, and Bruno, I'm getting to your question. I'm thinking it through in my head as I'm talking, so I will circle around to your question. So does that make sense to everybody? Where you're getting it? Okay. So I was giving you the example of $100,000. If your line 31, say, is $115,000, well, you're going to do the calculation as if it said 100. If your line 31 is $350,000, you're going to do the calculation as if it said $100,000 even. So $100,000 divided by 12 times 2.5 is $20,833, right? So anybody who's over that mark, your max loan amount, just like it was last time, is $20,833. And so the other thing I'll mention is there are a couple of you, not many of you, but there are a couple of you who fit that criteria where your income was over $100,000, your line 31 was over $100,000. You did the math, and whoever your lender was gave you like $25,000. They rounded it up. Just remember, that's all well and fine, except you're only forgiven up to the $20,833. So if they gave you $25,000, you can justify being forgiven up to the $20,833. That additional $100 or so is a loan that has to be repaid. So the forgiveness part of it, I'm going to get to the forgiveness part in just a second. The forgiveness part of it is totally maxed at $20,833. I'm not sure why some lenders chose to give more than what was actually forgivable. Some people asked for it, and it was just given, right? So apparently Jim has a question that I missed. Do we include the first round of our PPP payments as income in our 2020 quarters? That is a good question, Jim. I believe the answer to that to be no, because your first round PPP is not taxable income. So therefore, there's not going to be a 1099 on it. You're not going to have to report it, that I understand, that I know about, to on your tax returns or whatnot. So including it as income in your 2020 wouldn't make sense if in fact it's not taxable income. So I believe, I'm going to verify that for everybody. Thank you for asking that, Jim. I'm going to verify that for everybody, but I'm nearly certain that the answer is no, you do not utilize your PPP money in your calculation of income for your quarters. If you got first round PPP, consider it a happy birthday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Valentine's Day, whatever, right? Gift, because that's ultimately what it was, right? Especially for our industry, and I don't say this lightly, especially for our industry, which right after those loans were funded, our industry took off and like went bonkers, right? So we didn't know about it when we applied for it, and yet bam, they didn't come back to us and say, well, you in that industry, because it went bonkers and you all made more money than you were supposed to in 2020, give it back. Right? So that's why I call it the gift. All righty. So how do you apply? Right? I'm going to talk about how you apply, and then we'll talk about forgiveness. Any other questions on the calculation? Okay. So how do you apply? For those of you who applied for round 1 PPP and meet the first 2 criteria that we talked about, your quarter over quarter reduction and your 2019 Schedule C being positive, I would encourage you, if you were successful the first time, to just go and do it with exactly the same lender that you did the first go around. If that's your own personal bank, great. If it was, a lot of you went online to places like Kabbage.com, Kabbage.com, and applied. P.S. I'm oftentimes asked whether Kabbage is safe. I will tell you that a whole bunch of people on this call applied through, got the money through Kabbage, applied for forgiveness, are completely done and got the word back from Kabbage that they're all forgiven on round 1. And I think that they would tell you that it was a seamless, easy experience that for the most part seemed completely safe and secure. I can also tell you that Kabbage is owned by American Express. So it's not like it's 320 somethings out in San Jose smoking something in between their loan processing. It's legitimate business behind Kabbage, because they are a subsidiary of American Express. So and Lori just confirmed that. So the idea is that I would encourage you to go through the same process with the same people. And the reason for that is they've already said yes to you once. So now you can go back and say, here, I'm back, and they can say yes to you again. Some of you told me that your experience was less fun. And most of you who told me that went through big banks. You went through like the Chases or the Cities. If you did that, I would encourage you maybe to either try a local bank that's accepting applications for non-customers if you're not a customer, or go to an online portal like Kabbage or Lendio. Anna just put in there Lendio. Right, so there's a bunch of online operators that can assist you as well. The biggest problem I say with a big bank is that there's no one to call. It's so hard to reach somebody. It's kind of like what we talk our clients through when they're obtaining a mortgage. Like if they go to Bank of America for a mortgage, who are you contacting at Bank of America, right? So the smaller and the more local, I think that the more you can get your arms around it. And yet I encourage you to use the same people that you used last time, because there's familiarity there. If they said yes once, they will say yes twice, if you meet the criteria. When can you do that? The answer is, as of last week, the 11th, many smaller community banks were being funded and accepting some applications. Today is the first day that all banks have the opportunity to start receiving applications. Whether that means your portal or your bank is currently accepting applications, I can't answer. I know that Kabbage is still on hold a little bit. I think they're due any day now to reopen their portal, right? And I'm certain that what's happening is, now that people know what PPP is, not only the people who said yes to it last time, but the other people who didn't say yes or didn't know about it last time are going to be crowding into these portals. And so I believe that we have an opportunity to see a lot of backlog. So jumping on this quickly as soon as the portal will allow, I would encourage. If you go to Kabbage, start the process, see how far you can get. If you were a Kabbage person last time, you may have a separate link than the general public, because they may be accepting from their own customers first, right? Talk to your own banker. Talk to them about PPP applications and how they're working. Many of them are online applications, or if not, they'll just use the SBA document, which I can show you is the same, almost the same as, let me just share my screen with you real quick. It's almost the same as what it was last time, except it says second draw. And it asks another question regarding right here in the middle. It talks about reductions in gross receipts, right? So you have to put your gross receipts from 2020 and your gross receipts from 2019 so they can verify that your reduction is valid, right? All the rest of this is pretty much exactly the same as it was for the first round. And again, I'm going to show you where you can get these documents. Any questions on applying? Okay, last thing I want to just quickly give to you is forgiveness. Because for all intents and purposes, if you apply properly and get approved properly, most of you will receive 100% forgiveness as long as you apply then for forgiveness properly. And what all that means is, A, you can't lie, right? That is never a good path forward, regardless of what we're talking about. But when you're talking about applications for money from the government, I do not encourage anything but 110% verifiable truth, right? Which means if you have your multi-year trends report, if you have documentation from your banks or your taxes that you can show and prove what it is you're saying, then go that route. If you're guessing, I don't encourage that. I ask us for help, right? For those of you who earn an income through our market centers, we can tell you how much you earned, right? I'm going to show you in just a second where to go for your multi-year trends. So, so don't lie. Tell the truth. Be accurate. And if you do all those things and simply utilize the funds in a way that pays you a salary over the course of the time that you have, this time around you have a choice right out of the gate of either 8 weeks or 24 weeks as a repayment period. I would encourage you to minimally go with 10 weeks, because if you obtain a loan for 2.5 months worth of salary, worth of net profit, you need 10 weeks to pay it back weekly in order to have maximum forgiveness, right? If you do 8 weeks and you try and do it weekly, well, you haven't quite hit the 2.5 months. So I would choose the 24 weeks. You can use it up in 10 weeks or so, and then apply for that forgiveness. For those of you who applied for forgiveness for round one, most of you have seen how simple that was, because the loans were mostly less than $50,000. This time they're going to make it even easier for any loans less than $150,000, which again is most of you on this call. So tell the truth, be accurate. When you receive the money, have a system to how you're going to pay out the money so that you have something that's verifiable. Then pay out the money. Write a check from your business account to your personal account every week for 10 weeks. And then when it comes time to apply for forgiveness for round two, we will simply meet again and verify that you have all that you need. Although again, I think it's going to be even simpler than round one. Question about number of employees. Yes, when you are the sole proprietor or the self-employed person or the business owner, employees is one, right? Employees is one. If there's anybody on this call who paid a payroll company for employees that were not you in 2020 or currently do, and you can still meet the criteria of a reduction, just kind of connect with me afterwards. You may have an opportunity to go the actual payroll path, which is a little more complicated. You have to go through the process of showing the payroll, and your payroll company will create the 941s, which are the quarterly returns that they file on your behalf, plus payroll reports. It's a little bit more complicated, but I can help you. Since that doesn't deal with most of you, see me afterwards if you want some assistance on that. Any other questions? Because I have 3 things left I need to do with you. I need to show you where your multi-year trends are. I need to answer Bruna's question. And I need to then Well, maybe I have two things left to do. Those two things. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Rick. You did a Zoom on the forgiveness process through Cabbage. Was that recorded?
I don't believe it was because we actually put somebody through a process, which means we were using someone's personal info, which
Okay.
includes their social security number. So,
Okay.
so we purposely did not do that. I will tell you though, if you haven't applied for forgiveness through Cabbage, it's really very, very simple. And so I would encourage you to kind of give it a shot. And if you run into questions, take a little screenshot and text me the screenshot. I'll do my best to answer as quickly as I can. And if you're struggling and need more help than screenshotting back and forth, let me know. I'll be happy to jump on a Zoom and kind of walk you through the process. But it really is quite simple. It's 3 little sections. There's nothing to upload. You just tell it the information and make some attestations and sign it, and you're pretty much good to go.
Yes, I did start it. It was, I just know that there was something very specific to put in terms of the payroll frequency, and that's where I got stuck.
Got it. So I can tell you the answer to that. The payroll frequency for most of you, what we encouraged each of you to do was just write in flexible, commission-based.
Flexible commission-based, that was what I
And you
forgot.
do run out of room, so you may have to abbreviate commission, right?
Okay.
But when you tell the system that it's flexible, they don't really care, because that really is for the people who have payroll companies that they can show the reports on. So it almost doesn't matter. But again, to be as accurate as possible and tell the truth, telling the system that you are flexible as you are a commission-based person, I think is the smartest path forward. And people have been approved using that. So
That's what I thought. Thank you. And we should obviously finish that process before we attempt to apply for this new one, correct?
yes, so great question. I encourage you to do that. However, it is not part of the requirements. You do need to spend the money from round 1, right? So you need to be able to show that you've actually distributed the money as a salary from your business account to however you're doing that, right? Moving the money before you can apply, but you do not have to actually apply for forgiveness for round 1 before you apply for round 2.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Rick.
Yes, Lydia.
Is there a minimum amount that line 31 should be like it was on the round 1 for Schedule C?
Yeah, what was that minimum amount on line 31? Do you remember it for round 1?
I want to say around, I think it was 25. I'm not sure, honestly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I do recall that it had been stated that there was a minimum amount on line 31, something like $2,400 or something like that. I have not read that requirement in the requirements for round 2. So what I would say is, if it's positive, go ahead and do the math off of whatever positive number you have on line 31. If you feel like it's worthwhile. Now remember, you're only obtaining a small portion of that. So even if it's $2,500 divided, or $2,400 divided by 12 times 2.5, you're at $500 as your loan amount. So you'll have to decide whether or not a $500 or $400, a couple $100 would be worth you pursuing. However, I have not read a minimum yet. So what I would say again is, if you're interested in whatever that number is, go ahead and apply and let the lending institution come back to you and say, sorry, we have a minimum. If that helps, because I have not read about a minimum on that side. And Lydia is 100% right. There was a specific note in round 1 that there was a minimum. I think it was around 2,400, but I have not read that for round 2.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Let me give you a quick show of where you can go for your multi-year trends. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen real quick again. Bruna, hang in there. I haven't forgotten about you. Okay, so if you log into my KW, and go to reports, so your face will be here. Right to the right of your face, You click on reports. Then you'll take a nap. Not quite sure why we're struggling. Oh, here we go. Okay. And you'll come up with this here. And then you'll go to reports, associate, right? So in the reports dropdown, you want to go to associate. Now, if you'll notice in associate, you'll see multi-year trends. You'll click on multi-year trends. Mary, do me a favor, just nod your head. Tell me that you see what I'm doing on the screen. Okay, okay. There we go. You can see now multi-year trends December. Okay, perfect. So here's what you get. Now, clearly, I have been a slacker because I have not made one sale in all of the last 5 years. So this is what your multi-year trends looks like. Yours will be chock full of numbers, right? And what you want to do is scroll down, scroll through your multi-year trends report down to the last page, because your last page will show you, et voila, agent 1099 income. See right there in the middle? So the last page of your multi-year trends report in my KW will show you month by month what your 1099 income reported was. Again, you will have to then draw a line after March, after June, after September, after December, and calculate those 3 months. Quarter one would be January through March, April through June, quarter two, July through September, quarter three, and of course, quarter four, October through December. So this is where you get that information, and it'll show you 19 and it'll show you 20. You're just going to have to add up the quarters and then do the math. Does that help? Any questions on where I got this?
Wow, Rick, that's great because I've never even looked at this report before. I'm sorry to say.
Oh my stars, you're killing me, Russo.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, because here's what I can tell you. You're not the only one. I encourage everybody. I would go into, guys, here's how important these reports are to me as a business owner. I have a binder that every single month I print out my multi-year trends and put them in for each market center. I review them. I take this home. I sleep with it under my pillow. Like this is like my Bible for how I run the business. If you're not paying attention to all those numbers, remember this morning we talked about tracking. If you're not tracking, if you're not paying attention to these numbers, how do you know where to adjust, right? So that's a tool that I encourage you to start looking at. It changes as we transmit documents to Austin every single month. That gets updated monthly. So it will not, it's not real time yet. As it morphs and changes and goes into command, it will be real time. Today, it gets updated monthly, and it's updated by the 7th or the 8th of the month. And in a scenario like this, for those of you who have been in business 2019, 2020, both at KW, it's easy because you don't have to worry about asking Lisa or Deb for help there. You can just go and see exactly what your 1099 income was month after month and do your calculations that way. Okay, I think that's what we have for you today. Any other questions before we finish up today? We've gone through what PPP is. We've gone through what the new requirements are for round two. We've gone through the calculation and how you do that. We've gone through where and how to apply. And we've gone through the idea for forgiveness.
There was one question.
Yes, ma'am, Silva.
Someone was asking about the unemployment benefits, if they have been received, and I wanted to add to it if someone was receiving W-2 income also.
So is the question, do you
Are they to be
utilize?
accounted into the equation?
Yeah, so great question. Here's my answer, and again, I would check this with your lending institution, right? My answer is Anything that is taxable to you, I think from a telling the truth perspective, needs to be reported, right? So if you received unemployment, unemployment benefits are taxable, right? You will get some version of a tax document for unemployment benefits. So I would include those in your quarterly numbers. If you have another job that you get W-2 money for, I would include that in there. I would ask your institution who you're applying for the same question and then go with what they tell you. But if you choose not to ask anybody else, I would err on the side of over disclosure versus under disclosure, because when you sign all those documents, what you're telling the government is you're telling them the truth and that you are liable then for any errors. So I would rather err on the side of caution rather than winging it. But again, ask the financial institution that you're applying through, and they can give you their answer to that based on how they understand the SBA's guidelines. Go ahead, Silva.
Yeah, to that respect, perhaps if you have checked for unemployment that they're going to withhold your taxes, and on the same token on W-2 forms, you have been paying taxes. So maybe this is a good thing, one, but I agree with you that two, we still need to confirm. That's what my thoughts are.
Yes, well, paying taxes on the money is kind of a separate issue than reporting it as income for this purpose, right? Because that's what we're talking about. Are you reporting the W-2? Say you made $10,000 in the fourth quarter or every quarter from a W-2 job. That $10,000 of W-2 income is income to you, and so I would say you need to report that. The only reason we're using Schedule C net profit is because most of you don't have a W-2, so there's no way to track your actual gross income. Does that make sense? Okay, who else? I am going back, Bruna, to find your question so I can answer it. Debbie, did you have a question?
Yes, concerning that, I did get something from saying that I collected unemployment, and they sent me how much I received and everything. So they are tracking how much you think they paid you.
Yes, absolutely. They most definitely are.
Yeah, and also, if I missed the first part, is this recorded? I could go back and look at the.
It is recorded and it'll be posted in the YouTube channel by tomorrow morning.
PPP, yeah, okay.
Okay.
And also, I did not fill out the forgiveness also, but I'm with a bank and they told me I had a year, but should I wait or just do it right now?
If it were me, I would do it. If anyone got round one and you've used all the money, I would just go and apply for forgiveness now. I'm just get it over with.
Okay.
That's my advice. There's no reason not to wait.
Okay.
Rick?
Yes.
I won't ask anything else after this. If we received some unemployment, but it wasn't in the quarter that you're probably going to be 25% below, do you then have to include it?
So great question. And again, I would say that telling the truth about when money came to you is exactly what you need to do. So if you're using quarter three, if you're using quarter four as your year over year reduction period, and you received unemployment for a portion of quarter three, well, then I think the right thing to do is report that as quarter three income, but not include it as quarter four income because you didn't receive it in quarter four.
Okay. Thank
right?
you.
I think keeping it as simple as possible and utilizing the dates that money was received, which is what your multi-year trends report will tell you about your real estate income, and then follow through on that with any other income you received when you received it, then it's a true and accurate picture of quarter over quarter without any kind of funny business going on. And when I say funny business, I don't mean cheating. I mean even the opposite, right? So don't add in money to a quarter that you didn't receive it in just because you may be afraid that they may come back and say, well, you got unemployment money. Put it in the quarter that you know you received it in, because that's what you can prove. take steps always that when you sign your name and say this is a true and accurate picture, you know you can sleep at night because you know you've told the truth to the absolute best of your ability. So Bruna, I'm going to attempt to answer your question quickly, and then I'll answer. There's a couple of more in the queue. So an S corp that had a huge loss in 2020, if you're an S corp and you're utilizing payroll, right? The process for applying is slightly different. However, the same requirements are going to be in place. So if you can prove a quarter-over-quarter loss, 19 to 20, and you have qualified payroll income that your payroll company can then issue the reports on. Again, you'll need monthly or biweekly, however you pay yourself, payroll reports showing what the income was, as well as 941s, which are those quarterly returns. I don't see why you wouldn't be eligible. However, I'm happy to talk with you offline on that because it is sort of a specialty scenario. So we can follow up. I think the answer is yes. However, looking at it one-on-one and then talking to your financial institution is probably a better scenario, if that helps. Okay, any other questions before we finish?
Rick, just one
Yes,
quick
Lydia.
question on the clarity on this quarter over quarter. You're saying we only have to select one quarter where there is that 25% or more difference, and then we based all the calculations on that with regards to using that number.
Right. So yes and yes and no. So yes, 100% on the first piece. Only one of the 4 quarters has to show that loss in order for you to be eligible for the PPP round 2. However, the calculation of the loan has nothing to do with quarters. It's always based on your 2019 Schedule C, line 31.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Isn't this fun? I can't wait till we never, ever have to do this ever again. And yet, you know what? It's an opportunity for some additional funding if you choose to pursue it and you are eligible for it. Please note that I am happy to help in whatever way I can as this all rolls out. Again, I encourage you dive in with your lenders that you did it the first time with because you'll see the success there, and then come back to me if you have any questions or problems. I'm happy to jump on a one-on-one and help you through that.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing.
Yes, ma'am. Last thoughts.
Thank you. I heard so many people saying that they would have never gotten that money if it weren't for you. So I'm really grateful as well.
Well, you know what? I'm glad to hear that, and I'm thrilled to assist. It's you know what? They're funky times, and if we all join arms and stick together, we'll come out the other side better people and better business people. So anything I can do to help is my pleasure to do. So just let me know, and we'll jump on it. Again, go to your financial institution and see if they're accepting applications. If they tell you you have to wait a little bit, then just be patient. Wait a little bit. I think that, but don't wait too long. As soon as you are able, if this is something you're eligible for, I would jump on it because, like last time, they got overrun and they had to put a pause on and hold applications. So I would jump in as quickly as I possibly could. Again, any questions? Either rewatch this because it has been recorded. It'll be posted to YouTube by tomorrow morning, perhaps late tonight, but certainly by tomorrow morning, or reach out and I'll be happy to answer what I can.
One final question.
Yes.
The book that you recommended, what was it?
You mean for the masterminds?
Yeah.
Called Exactly What to Say by
Thank you.
Phil Jones. There's also Exactly What to Say for Realtors. That is not the one that I have read. I've read the regular one, and we're going to make our own kind of for Realtors one. So that's the idea.
Thank you.
Guys, as always, it's a pleasure to spend time with you. Have a great afternoon. Join us at 1 o'clock for stats if you need to know how to pull those stats that I was delivering last week. And then for those of you who are joining us at 4 o'clock for Ignite, we'll see you then. Look forward to it. See you soon.